Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. Although tonight it is not live. We're actually recording live to tape. And tonight Jim and I are going to be talking about the Banshees of Inisherin. Let me pull up my show notes. Bear with me, everyone. I do know I have them. I just need to find them. All right. Yes, here we are. Okay. The Banshees of Inisherin. Here is the oh-so-informative logline from IMDb. Where are we here? Two lifelong friends find themselves at an impasse when one abruptly ends their relationship with alarming consequences for both of them. Doesn't that just tell you what you're looking at? Anyway, basically, we've got a couple of characters. Colum, played by Brendan Gleeson, figures he's got a musical legacy in him if he can just ditch his happy dullard of a buddy, Patrick, played by Colin Farrell. So after trying to ghost the guy, which is kind of hard in an incredibly small community on a tiny island, Colin gives poor Patrick his very best, "It's not me, it's you, so get lost" breakup speech, and begins to focus on his muse and his music. Needless to say, it doesn't play out well. Witty wordplay for you there. Anyway, this flick, it was written and directed by Martin McDonagh, the very same writer and director of In Bruges, and stars the aforementioned Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell, who also starred in Bruges. It also stars Kerry Condon, Barry Keoghan, Gary Lydon, Pat Short, John Kenny, and Brittany Neekdun, and I totally screwed up the pronunciation of that, and I even practiced, damn it. Sorry about that. And Sheila Flitton as Mrs. McCormick. Now let's talk about the social nutrition checklist. Would it get a reframe stamp? No, it would not. Is it union made? Who the heck knows? I couldn't find any evidence, so I'm assuming it wasn't. Does it pass the Bechdel test? Yeah, it does. And is it class conscious? Notwithstanding the fact that it was produced with non-union labor, I'm going to argue it does. In part because it totally, I think there are some institutional metaphors, but it focuses on the, let's say, a regular schmo in post-independence but Civil War Ireland. Speaking of which, that brings up Historicity. Yeah. I can't say it's not a historical film per se. That said, the Irish Civil War is kind of in the background. And so I did do a bit of research, and I think there's a thematic element there. So I did a bit of research, and you'll find in the description a Wikipedia article, just kind of giving you, well, a Wikipedia article, an outline, a high-level overview of the Irish Civil War. And there's also a War Graphics documentary. I would say it definitely seems to have a tilt, but still a pretty solid summary of the facts. And so, yeah, I suggest you take a look at those, and that'll be a great launching point for if you want to dive deeper into that conflict, understanding that conflict. I would also recommend, and if I remember, I'll put it in the description as well, the Extra Credits History series on the Easter Rising, the Easter Uprising, which I think would give even more context to what was going on in early 20th century Ireland. The only other thing I didn't look into, and I'm sorry about this, folks, it was one of those, how far do you dig, right? Was it an accurate capture, though, of 1920s rural Ireland? It certainly looked it to me, somebody who has no familiar with that area and no really deep understanding of Irish history. So take that for what it's worth. It certainly felt authentic, but yeah, it was that it had to riff on Stephen Colbert, truthiness, but was it accurate? Who the heck knows? All right, with that out of the way, I think it is now time, high time even, to bring on my co-host with the most, Mr. Jim Cheboyko. Whoopsie. How you doing, my friend?
Good, good. Am I unmuted so?
You are.
Good, okay, good. Instead of in it, I like how they put "so" on the end of the sentences here, or the end of the question. So I've decided to adopt that now.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
Here, Jim, before we get into the spoiler zone, let's say for somebody who stumbled on this and was thinking more of a lighter review of same, why don't we give a quick see it or skip it? And then we'll kind of go into our one-line why or our two-line why we think they should follow the description. So if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Jim, the Banshees of Inisherin. See it or skip it?
See it.
Me too. Definite see it. Now, let me ask you, why should people see it?
4 great performances, at least. Some amazing cinematography. There's not a sort of a bad landscape shot in this, and a movie that asks questions that not a lot of other movies ask. I don't think it's a very puzzling movie in the best senses of the word. I've seen it now twice, and I finally came up with something in the shower this afternoon.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
Give my thought. Yeah. So
yeah. Okay. For myself, yeah, I agree with you. Remarkable performances, well-told story, a definite beginning, middle, and end. Like you say, goes into areas that other films don't. But here's the real reason why I think people should see it. This, much like in his earlier effort in Bruges, I think this film is going to stick with me for a long, long time. And I think for that reason alone, it is worth seeing. So that's my skip it. Or see it. See it, damn it. All right. Yes. With that out of the way, I think it's time to get into the spoiler zone. Don't you, Mr. Cheboyko?
Absolutely, yeah. Just
all
so
right.
We don't give anything away.
Okay, here. Let me make sure.
Cut off our fingers to spite our hand or something.
Let me make sure I really hit that hard.
We're in the spoiler zone, everybody.
Okay,
that's it for the FX budget.
Just kidding. I do, and as I've been doing of late, Jim, talking about the meaning, and instead of just jumping in and say, so what do you think it meant?
Sure.
What I want to ask you is, first, of a series of questions. Why do you think this is set during the Irish Civil War?
Yeah, and that's the thing that I actually sort of came up with. A lot of people are saying, I was looking at some of the other commentary, that it's an allegory for the Civil War straight up. It's just like a straight up allegory. I kind of think something a little bit different. And I was having, I'll just give me a sec here because it's a little bit of a roundabout answer. It's a movie about people asking unpleasant questions of themselves. And yet it looks beautiful and warm. And I thought, is the cinematography doing this movie justice? It's making it all cozy, and it's a place you want to go. And they're getting huge tourist numbers apparently down there because of this movie. But does that work against the hard existential questions of the movie? And I think what happens is why the Civil War is in here is that it's a statement that man is not a peaceful animal if the conflict isn't coming from the outside, it's coming from the inside. Aside from the very horrible policeman in town, there's almost no threats to their lives. They seem to be well fed. They're not really talking about a little bit about poverty, but the constant question they're asking each other and talking about is despair. How's the despair? How are you coming along with that? It's back a bit, that kind of thing. So I think if the conflict isn't coming from the outside, aka the Civil War, it's coming from the inside. And I think it's sort of a commentary on conflict, the nature of conflict. If you don't get it from there, it's going to come from here.
Okay. Why do you then, let me ask you this, and I think I'm with you. Yeah, it's a straight up allegory of the Civil War. I'm like,
yeah, it's almost so many people
both
said
sides
that.
were
Yeah.
very clear, incredibly clear on why they were fighting. One may think of it looking from the outside as ridiculous, whereas here you've got Patrick has no clue why. At no time does he really understand, get why why he's no longer Cullum's friend. Why do you think then? Why do you think we have some of these characters? You do have the cop. You've got the nosy postmaster. You've got the disconnected, priest.
Yeah.
The only local authority figure that maybe doesn't earn our respect, but at least not our antipathy, is maybe the publican, John Joe, the pub owner. Why do you think we have those? Why is the cop there? Why is Mrs. O'Riordan, and I think I pronounced that correctly. Why is she there?
Well, I think you have to. Those institutions were so heavy on the Irish people, as far as I understand it, the church and law back in the day. So I think they needed to be represented, and they're represented by these two. The cop is such a horrible person. It's funny, Martin McDonagh doesn't seem to have a very positive. He gave the last cop in his last movie cancer, so I don't think he's got a very good positive.
What was the great line near the end? Where one of the many great lines, because this film has awesome moments that are delivered in dialogue. But it's if we can't punch, what was it? Something to the effect of, I wrote it down, I think. If we can't punch a cop, what are we even doing? Or if it was punching a cop, he's in confession and he's actually, Cullum is finally, sincerely, he is feeling something. He is feeling shame and remorse and guilt. He is under the burden of sin. And the priest is, well, you mutilated yourself and you punched a cop. And it's like, well, if punching a cop's a sin, what are we even doing here? I was like, which is, going to the, and this is where I'm like, I don't think it's I agree with you. It's not a simplistic allegory. But I do think he's making a commentary on institutions. It's not about the Civil War, other than a general, I think, an approach to conflict where he's like, this is all stupid. But beyond that, it's more the smaller, the petty representatives of these institutions, then I think that's kind of why they're there. They're almost like petty villains, but I'm wondering, and comes to what do you think he thinks of artists? And let's say artists as an institution, as a cultural, let's say an Irish cultural institution. Because I think we see
Yeah, that's a
that,
good
not just in
question.
Column, but
Yeah.
in the artists who come to visit him, the other fiddlers and the other musicians, almost
Yeah.
I must learn this from this wise redneck out in the country.
Yeah, and they're even able to overlook the fact that he's currently bleeding from his the stumps on his hand as he's leading them through
Yeah, at the
through
end.
song. Yeah, I mean they're committed. I think McDonough's more critical about those institutions, and yeah, I think you're right, and even the post office too. It's interesting.
Well, I
you
think
mentioned
that's
that
Mrs.
because
O'Riordan. That's why
but that
she's
is
there.
and post office has a huge, there's a big battle that they use the main post office in Dublin for,
Right,
and
the
that sort
Easter
of thing
Rising.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, these things are institutional, and there's sort of like these weak little sort of Mandarin figures ineffectual priest, a nasty cop, a nosy postmistress. But in terms of the publican, the one that sort of is the liaison maybe, or the peacemaker, he seems, that I think speaks to community. It's not just an institution, but it's the representative of the community, and the artists all meet at the pub. So I think I think, I don't think there didn't seem to be that much.
I don't think he was that effective, actually. He also didn't sort of fulfill, but in a weak kind of don't upset column.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll do something crazy. And I
sort of reinforces the community, aspects of it, the like, oh, let's not rock the boat and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Even as this maniac, like, almost like a micro version of a cultural, I will cut my nose to spite my face.
Yeah. No, artists, I mean, Colm, Brendan Gleeson character, he's sort of a newly found artist. He now considers himself an artist, and sometimes that's a little bit different than somebody who's been in it for a while. The type of writer that says don't edit one word or anything like that. But he's sort of, a lot of this movie is people defining themselves, whether it's Siobhan, who decides to sort of, the big reader who decides to finally say, screw it, I'm going to go work
in a library
on the mainland for the library. Like I'm done with this place here. I'm done being the only literate person on the island.
Yeah, and yet another moment, like where it kind of summarizes her whole ethos. You're all so fucking boring with your fucking petty resentments and feuds. and it's like, this is...
Yes.
If the movie ended on that note and her fucking off, I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm all right with that.
And she leaves, and you don't see her again. There's a letter, but she's done. So yeah, in terms of the arts, I don't know if he's as critical as he is of other institutions, unless you picked up on something. But they just seem to be sort of there to accommodate the Colm character.
Well, let me pitch this. Like, there's a couple of things I drew from Colm, and one of them, the easier thing I felt to draw from him is it's like, I do think there's a bit of and it may be more culturally relevant in Ireland, maybe, but I think we see some of that here too. The tortured artist who will sacrifice and will deny, there's I think he thinks that kind of behavior is ridiculous because it is not, look at what I'm willing to do. I will cut my tongue out because I'm being denied the ability to speak. No, it's just a local asshole who is making someone else responsible for it.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's a bit of him maybe, with a bit of a critique of the over dramatic artist, and everyone else around, the society around, kind of going, well, hey, whatever crazy thing he's doing, he makes such lovely music, and again, don't like that. And I think this comes back to some conflict and other things that maybe the director was thinking of, but certainly part of it is he's like, if you keep talking to me, I will do this to myself. And everyone else going, oh my goodness, sorry, happy-go-lucky dullard. You now have to, you must control your behavior because he's made you responsible for his. And it's like, wait a second here. I do believe I have a button. That sorry.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah. Well, at one point, the Siobhan character even says, cutting off all your fingers. I won't do the accent. Cutting off all your fingers, that's going to impact your playing, isn't it? And he goes, yeah. Yeah, but I called it,
Yeah. Siobhan, the only truth speaker. Well, her and another question. Also, the woman who delivers maybe in some great lines here, it might also be one of the best lines. I'm not trying to be nice. I'm trying to be accurate. And the way Mrs. McCormick, the way the woman delivers that with a fucking grin, and I'm like, oh, I know it doesn't bode well.
Yeah.
She's not a banshee. She's more of a harbinger of things to come. But it's like, that is so good. But why is she there? Why is Mrs. McCormick there? Because in some ways, it's really Siobhan who's in a movie littered with truth bombs out of cruelty. Siobhan seems to be the only one will say a truth without cruelty or really on point. Not the, well, what about you? Because a lot of like truth to be a shit happens,
Yeah. There's that other part that you quoted Siobhan on. There's I think she says a couple seconds earlier, "Oh, great, another silent man on the island," and that's sort of must have been fun to deliver that little Jeremiah, I guess, when she's sort of rolling her eyes at the men collectively on the island. But she incidentally won the Best Supporting Actress at the BAFTAs last night, and so did Barry Keoghan, who played Dom, the village Gom. The
only the one who every now and then, like in a world of sort of and he seems to be saying something about that too, or at least I felt intellectual pretensions, constant opinions about, you're a reader, like even Colm is trying to say, hey, you must feel the same way I do. Here we are amongst all these dummies with no intellectual discourse, nothing that, helps with our purpose.
Yeah.
And there's Barry Keoghan's character. God damn it, what's this? Dominic. Thank you. Dominic. He says, touche. Well, in the meaning of touche. But it's like, yeah, you used it right.
Yeah.
You used it right. Even his faint hearts and all that. Yeah. It's used appropriately. He is the village idiot, for lack of a better word, the village Gom. But he is the one who he's using it correctly. He's got poor social skills, but is he an idiot? I don't think he is.
Yeah, he's a lot, behaviorally, he's sort of accused of bothering the village women. Yeah. And he probably has something that could be rectified with, medication these
or
days.
maybe not a lifetime of beatings from his
Yeah,
father. The
good
cop,
point. That
you
could-
know.
yeah.
Not really an
No.
environment conducive to developing social skills.
And another
know.
another missing mother figure as well. But there's a couple
I
things that
wonder
he
why.
does. Yeah, there's a couple things that he does say. He says, oh, don't chew with your mouth open. Where are we, France? And what was the other one? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, Colm's not going to talk to me. He's going to threaten to cut off his fingers. And he goes, what is he, 12?
Yes. Because he's not going to be the best friend. He's not my best friend. And what is he, 12? Which is what the other community dullard. Because you kind of start to get the idea. It's like, he's not as dim as Dominic, but that everyone thinks he's pretty dim. And he's another one who zeroes right in on the, what are you, 12?
Yeah. In a way, he sort of plays the jester, I guess, a little bit, because he's allowed to say certain things. But
you mean Dom?
Dom, yeah. But at the same time, he's
like a Shakespearean fool in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But he also, and this is, like, you think about the people who actually die in the film. Poor Jenny, the miniature donkey, and who's literally chokes on one of the fingers that Colm uses as weapons.
Yeah.
That he throws at, it's like
the door.
What an asshole.
Yeah.
And poor Dom, who, well, I guess I'll just go over there and do what I was doing, and there's this fucking priest going, you're not going to do anything to yourself. Whereas there's poor Dom, now it's like, well, faint hearts and all that. And I'll go over that way and go jump in the lake.
Yeah.
Literally, why are those the ones that die?
That's a good question. I often what happens, I find, is that the supporting characters are the ones sacrificed. They're sort of the real, that the lead character is probably going to survive everything and come out either changed for the good or for the worse.
Yeah.
And a formula that I've recognized since I was a kid is that the real risk is to the supporting characters. Don't fall in love with any of them because, they're all at risk. And often they're sometimes they're the more, not in this necessarily, but sometimes the supporting characters are the more interesting roles are the ones that I look forward to, or the Academy Award nominations that are the most interesting, that kind of thing. But just in my own humble opinion. But I guess it's just to sort of threaten the main character without really sort of being, finishing the main character off. A little bit of a bait and switch kind of thing.
Yeah, but is it as simple as that? Like, none of these guys are ever doing it, I'm not sure. I don't know why either. I don't have an answer to this, but there's a part of me, it's got to be more than that. And I'm just, for whatever reason, I'm getting too wrapped up in other things that I'm not seeing. What I'm worried about is somebody on Twitter already has summarized it.
Yeah.
What's that jerk, Vinny, whatever?
Oh, Mancuso.
Yeah, Mancuso. That.
Yeah.
Intelligent, insightful bastard. Okay. Do you
remember what he said, or do you have any other?
Oh, for which?
Did he say something about Banshees?
No, I'm just assuming he did.
Yeah.
Like I said, somebody like him will have said something insightful that'll answer my question and a million others I didn't think to ask.
Yes, yeah.
That intelligent, insightful, talented bastard.
Yes. Yeah.
And yes, no beeping there. At the end, it kind of takes a turn. it's almost, it becomes in a way a weird little mini revenge film at the end.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Is that even a theme in this? Like conflict is? Is the revenge kind of well, maybe I might be answering my question right now, Jim. Is revenge, are we seeing that revenge as a, well, this is the logical conclusion of stupid conflicts. Somebody's going to burn something down,
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's there's not really anywhere for Padraig to go, is there? I mean, he doesn't have any. He could go live with his sister, but as he says, I think he says at some point, "This is my island. I'm not going to leave.
I belong here.
I belong here.
Yeah.
I like living my unexamined life here, which is fine for him, I guess. But I think that's sort of where's he going to put his energy? Like, he doesn't have a sister. He doesn't have, well, sister is on the mainland. His donkey has died. He still has his dairy farm, which he seems to rarely attend to. Lost his best friend, and even the village Gom, who was sort of his second friend, all gone.
He lost him as a friend. He doesn't know he's dead. She just left.
Yeah. So, he's lost a lot. He seems to have, almost everything. He still has a home, I guess. But this is I guess, where he's going to funnel his energy into. I mean, if you don't have happiness, then what do you have? You have anger, perhaps. And he's not got anything to, occupy his time otherwise.
But
I think it's just sort of like,
doesn't kill the dog, makes a special effort.
Yeah.
Follows through on his threat. Makes a special effort, though, make sure the dog's okay. Even at the end, he's like, hey, well, thanks for, like, finally calm is like, he seems actually like devastated. Like, it's almost like all his, and I am firmly, if there's teams here, I'm firmly on Team Padraig, and I'm like, you're a bastard. And I'm especially pissed at the character because he is a character. It's like, oh, I've been that asshole. But the end of the movie, even then, Patrick says, but the dog is, well, anytime. Like, it's, it hits like a weird hammer, that it's like, even then, he is trying to be a nice guy. Or he's like, there's a core of him that's, well, but I'm still nice. And that even seems to be another theme in this movie.
Yes.
The nice guy versus, well, you got that old witch. I don't think she's a banshee. She never keens, Mrs. McCormick. But, she's definitely, let's say, a donor of actual information, of accuracy, but is this against the nice guy and no, the artist must self-actualize, or is it a kind of a quiet praise of just a regular dullard, which we probably are a lot more. We're a lot more Padraig than we are, this artist, this achiever, even the petty marionettes, have probably a richer life, as a dummy.
Yeah. No, it's definitely...
That doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think I know some of what I'm trying to cover there.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to figure out, trying to remember what the final scene is, and it's on the beach, right?
Yeah.
And I think the last line is anytime, and he just sort of walks away.
Like, even his personage, who's that moment is very hard, and you feel like, the accomplished what decades wasn't able to, is turn him hard and angry. you know?
Yeah, yeah. So he's just like all the rest of them, and you know, you sort of wonder how much thought Column's given to this, and he hasn't really sort of appreciated what he has. There's a lot out there about the selfishness of artists, right? And
Yeah.
and how somebody who is maybe a really great artist, actor, musician, writer was in his or her real life not a good father, not a good mother, not a good spouse,
A miserable prick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but a good writer, but a good, composer, and so that kind of speaks to that a little bit, I think, too.
Yeah.
Of the four main characters, you have Dom, Siobhan, Colm, and Padraig.
Yeah.
Padraig is the only one who doesn't. Initially when I was thinking about this movie, I was thinking, is McDonough saying, the pleasures of the unexamined life, but I just sort of in jest, but Dom and Siobhan and Colm all sort of think about who they are in relation to the rest of it, and they make decisions. So one is Colm gives an ultimatum that leads him to cut off all the fingers on one hand.
Yeah.
Dom kills himself, and Siobhan goes to the mainland to work in a library. So that these are people wrestling with fairly hard questions that have important outcomes. Colm doesn't have this problem. He doesn't have that introspection. Padraig, sorry, yeah. Padraig doesn't have that, isn't prone to that introspection, and he probably would have just coasted along until he was forced to he was confronted with this challenge that Colm gave him.
But here's usually we like to, so many movies we like a nice arc. For the protagonist. And I don't know if you'd agree with me, Jim. I think it seems pretty clear. Padraig is the protagonist in this film. Which I think that choice alone is refreshing, to take the dullard, because usually it's about some artist trying to break free. The creative person being held back by the dim bulbs they're surrounded by. And while they can be cruel to a dullard, and they have to then some noblesse oblige toward that poor ding dong, because they've been mean, it all kind of works out where they get to go on to a brighter future. Again, around cooler people.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's like, no, let's talk about the dullard, and these people are just perfectly nice. They get up, they do their thing, they are participants in the community. Are they particularly deep? No. But yeah, Socrates was a bastard who, in a separate thing, I think I could actually effectively defend his murder. He was not a good guy, and politically not a good guy. And even then they're like, here, you could just go into exile. Can you? No? All right, asshole.
Yeah.
But that's not Padraig. And when you think about what happens to him, this poor bastard, because Colum's, it literally it's not me, it's you. And I want to do something with my life. No middle ground, no. Listen, you got to leave me alone in the morning. I really got some important things I want to deal with. Or do what everyone else does, hide behind a fence, as they do with Mrs. McCormick. There are ways you can do it. No, he cold shoulders him in one of the few, in one of or actually really the only public space that they enjoy regularly. That's where he's like, well, I'll get up and go there. And and you see everything after that, Colum still has a social life in that space. Whereas because of this, Padraig doesn't. He is, it's him and Dom, and that's it. And Dom is always skating on a line of getting kicked out because he creeps the girls out.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is all of a sudden socially isolated, ostracized, just because this asshole says, I have a higher purpose. And everything we see there is him just suffering the consequences of Column's, we cannot talk anymore. Which in a small community, that's dangerous. Dominic is able to kill himself in many respects because he has no social ties, because his father, the cop, is beating him badly, and none of the other community members, heck, the post office is, well, that's not good information.
Yeah.
Literally. The nexus of information for the community, the woman who brings it in and I'm sure spreads it. She says, no problem reading other people's mail.
Yeah.
The cop's like, why are you talking to that guy? Like, they all are minding each other's business for the worst fucking reasons. And so poor Dom can kill himself because no one's looking out for him except fucking Padraig and to a lesser degree, Siobhan. She does let him in.
Yeah.
Kicks him out the nest day. But when he makes a play for her, she is not cruel in her rejection. She is really, it's a heartbreaking moment, but I don't look at either, I get it. Oh, Siobhan would be like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But she does it with sensitivity that respects him as a human being, whereas everyone else, that's local idiot. Yeah. And I want to say this, in part, one of the reasons this role, this performance, this character, this theme got under my skin is I've been that dick, and it's like, oh, Robert, you've been that dick. Ugh. I'll never be able to think of this movie without not being reminded of a few times in my past where I've brushed someone off.
Yeah, maybe we all have a little bit. I mean, that's maybe speaks to why it's doing fairly well. I think is that there's of course universality to the best works out there. So I know what you're talking about though.
Yeah. So yes, the Civil War is there for a reason.
Oh yeah. So to answer that question from
but
minutes ago?
to just it's just an allegory for the Civil War, and this person's this and this person's that. It's like, no, a lot of cops are fucking sadists.
Yeah.
You got the executes 6 bob and a lunch, and there he is. You're not even bothering.
Frankly, I'd execute you for that, or he goes, what is he? One of the lines is he said, why don't you come along? Come with me. You could write a miserable fecking song about it. He's even reaching out too. Like the cop is like, I need connection with somebody. Why don't you come along? We'll have a ferry ride and lunch and
and then he does the just kidding, a classic move we all use. Oh, just kidding. As he's rejected. But and I think that goes to he is saying something. I mean, McDonough, he is saying something loud and fucking clear with his blowing off or there's calm blowing off Padraig, but still socializing the bare minimum niceties with the cop who he saw beat his former friend in the street. And he tried to help him out until the guy broke down crying. Oh, well, sorry, your misery is too much for me. That is imposing on my, on my space, man. But, and then there you are in the pub. Yes, he defends them, but only when he's being truly awful. And Colum has gone beyond. He has breached a line, killed the guy's fucking donkey.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots going on. I wanted to mention this quickly is I watched this Saturday night again. I watched this previously with my wife, and I certainly didn't mind watching it again. And actually watched it with subtitles, which I highly, because I missed stuff the first time without subtitles. Little jokes and nothing too major,
Absolutely.
but name places and things like that, including the town in which my niece lives, which is kind of cool. But so I stopped the movie. I stopped the streaming. It's
Yep.
on Disney Plus. And, it goes to whatever channel you'd been watching previously, which was CNN. And I am not lying. They were talking about this movie. It was a story. And that's why people are coming to Atchill Island because of this movie. Like it was a report on the effect of this movie
Really?
on that island, on the place, and how they're giving tours. And they're sort of sprucing things up.
Wow.
And they showed places from the movie. It was the weirdest coincidence. And I went, whoa, I got to talk about this when we talk about the movie. But it was really cool. And, in a movie about misery, it's funny what they attract. They often have those horrible portrayals of Boston families. And I always joke, brought to you by the Boston Chamber of Commerce and Tourist Center, apparently everyone's headed to the west coast of Ireland. And, not too far from where Luke Skywalker has his beach cave.
Yeah.
So
this is where the donkey died.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
the fuck?
Yeah.
Okay, on that, when we come back after this scheduled message,
Oh,
I want to know why you think, you talked about it a bit before, but why do you think this place was shot so pretty? Because it didn't have to.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have those big wide shots, the big high. Like there are some glamour shots there, and that ain't just because the tax credit and they got some tourist funding. That was, I think that was on purpose. There was a thematic purpose to it and storytelling purpose to it. So I want to know that. But before we do that, Jim, I think we got to talk about next week's movie.
Oh, yes.
So why don't you tell us about what we're going to be looking at next week?
Well, we're going to be talking about a big award season juggernaut, the movie Tar with Kate Blanchett.
That is correct, everybody.
And it should be a good one. I haven't seen it yet, and it's been sort of on my list, and I might even be able to talk the wife into watching it. But it's I'm looking forward to checking this one out. Apparently, it's full of stuff. Lots going on. So
another. I didn't think the Banshees of Inisherin would be there, but it's like, oh wow, another thing about an artist.
Yes. Oh yeah.
An artist that might be a bit of a jerk.
Yeah.
All right. Back to this though, and back to my question about why you think it's shot so pretty.
Yeah, there's a dissonance between how beautiful the island looks. It looks almost like a paradise, and if you see a lot of the shots are on what has to be fairly, maybe it's a nice weather place, but sunny days. It looks like it's spring, so everything's sort of coming in warm. There's warm tones. The sun is warm. But I think despite all this beauty and despite the seeming warmth.
Yeah, I don't think it rains once in this flick. Not once.
And even the night, it's sort of misty. They have that one shot of John Joe's pub, and it's sort of fog, and everything looks inviting, and it's sort of like, are these on Airbnb? I'd love to stay in that little paint peeling, cottage.
You never hear wind?
There. You don't. Yeah, it's the opposite of a Kurosawa movie where the wind is constant. But that's an excellent point. So I think what it's doing is building a dissonance between the beauty of the spot and the sort of the sort of, and this just occurred to me today after the second time I've watched it, the torturedness of the souls and the hard existential questions that they're asking themselves. And, not everything turns out well for the characters. So, you could have it in that sort of, whenever they shoot a movie in Iceland, or if you look at Bon Iver's video for Holocene, everything's sort of, it's pretty, but it's harsh, and it's almost monochromatic, and or it's almost black and white. There's not a lot of color, but there is a lot of color in this.
Yeah, you do.
They could have shot it like, like the rough west coast of Ireland, and had cold skies and cold cliffs and stuff, and they don't.
No.
It seems to be a conscious choice, and that's sort of, I did notice that I thought, boy, this is so throwaway shots like Padraig being not kicked out of the pub, but like, go sit somewhere else. So he goes outside, and of course there's cliffs and waves crashing into the cliffs behind him, and it's a sunny day. And so I think
but not like a cold wind where he has to pull up and spray, and he's just no,
it's windbreaker weather maybe, but not your nor'easter hat or anything like that. So, I think that's a purposeful choice, is that you're combining this beauty with this sort of internal harshness.
Could it be also as simple as, wow, these people can make a misery out of living in a paradise, in a rural paradise?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably a little harder than
simplistic.
Hawaiian life or something like that. But it's not Moana. But at the same time, it's a lot of these people are taking their lives for granted. Maybe it's a statement too. I was sort of thinking that it sort of bursts the bubble of the cozy rural life as well. I think that's maybe something that they were working on. Because people tend to fetishize that kind of thing. Yeah. And I think it's sort of speaking. A lot of people from a big city sometimes think, I wonder what it would be like to live in a small town. Yeah. Well, I think this is sort of what it's like to live in a small town.
Well, I thought of that myself, but I was almost like, there's two kinds of movies about small town living. And this one's firmly on, like, you've got Hallmark. Mm-hmm. Never met there's no Hallmark movie that visits a miserable small town. They're all racist American idols, a pastoral, fantasy. Jane Austen would go, well, that's a little much. The bucolic, that's too much even for me.
The simple life.
This one is definitely a lot more on the, everyone's in your fucking business. Mm-hmm. And if you're alone, you're really alone. Mm-hmm. I was, even as I was reflecting on my own life and my own bad behavior, with past former friends. And it's like, at least in the city, you could find your own ding-dongs, your small crew of intimates. There was a part of me nearing the end of the film kind of wishing it's like, go, Patrick, go. You would have your sister, and you'd find a community, mm-hmm. of Doms and Padraigs and, your people. You'd find your people. You're even the columns would be able to avoid you when they needed to and see you, because there is something to be said for it. I remember this woman, a partner of a former coworker, years ago. And how did she put it? She says, she's from Australia. And she says, one of the things I hate about Canadians is everyone's got to get along. I remember a friend in high school. She came up to me and says, I don't know what it is, but right now I find you really fucking annoying. It's not you, just something. And so we're not going to hang out for a while. And because they're both Australian. She's okay, cool. I get it. And here is a world. Canadians don't do that.
Yeah.
Although I've learned over hard, it's like, I find them annoying right now. It's not that they're bad people, but I just find them annoying. So I'm going to avoid them for a while, and this comes with some maturity, some age where you kind of go, it's not an existential threat to my existence. They haven't harmed me in any real way. I'm just finding them particularly annoying. X, Y, whatever. They needed a healthy a dose of an Australian woman going, yeah, okay, hey, right now, Padraig, I find you annoying. I need a break. I'll tell you when the break's over.
Yeah, I have an English acquaintance, and he said, you never know, English people, if they don't like you, they'll tell you to your face. But Canadians won't do that necessarily. So I guess there's different sort of national treatments to these kinds of situations.
Cultural. Yeah, there's certainly cultural differences. But I got to admit, for this one, Jim, it was like kind of that's what they needed. That Australian saying, "Hey, I find you annoying." So Padraig could at least, because what is part of the tragedy, and it's an interesting story tension. We don't really, what was actually up your ass? Because if it was the usual, a story, and I guess that really means, Jim, we're in the story world right now. Although I do have one more meaning question for you. I'll ask at the end of the show. But if we look at it, he's decided to tell the story from the dullard. I keep saying dullard. From the happy-go-lucky, no future dreams, no dreams whatsoever.
Unambitious, yeah.
The unambitious ding-dong for a reason. But all of a sudden, that makes for interesting story. It's not just an interesting story choice thematically, but all of a sudden you get to tell the tale in a different way. And I'm wondering, like, one of the great, I think, options it gave him was how ridiculous Column sounds when you're hearing it through Padraig's. It's it really does sound like a 12-year-old. I'm not going to be your friend anymore. Why? Well, I want to make music.
Yeah.
Sounds stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, and to some extent it you could brush it off as mere irritation, because he does recount to Colm does recount to Padraig. He said, "Do you know what you talked about?" It's hard not to try the accent. "Do you know what you talked about for 2 hours last night? What was in your donkey's crap?" That was it. And so was that the final straw?
Yeah. If it was flipped around, that would have been the inciting incident. Yeah. Well, let me tell you about last night. 2 hours of listening to this fucking idiot talking about shit. I can't do it. Marge, Siobhan, I can't talk to your brother anymore. 2 hours,
So was that the sort of the trigger there? Was it just mere irritation? And then the realization is that there's, in addition to a midlife crisis and the fighting off of despair, is this, I want to make music and this guy's taking up way too much time, which is, there's other ways to handle that as well.
Again, I need my mornings. So do not fucking come over until 4. Boundaries, not excommunication. Well, and
it's asking a lot. It is a big ask, a big tell, I guess, rather than a big ask. But it's a little unfair. A little unfair. It's kind of a crazy demand, I think, on Colum's part.
And then the demand, the consequences of not following through on his ridiculous demand. Because it's not like you did X to my sister, or we can't, like, I mean, if there's anyone for shunning, it's the fucking cop.
Yeah.
You know, another
Yeah.
guy who at the very beginning can't even say hello because he's
Yeah.
too full of himself.
Yeah.
You know, which I keep coming back to is, you know, almost does he look at in some respects, any civil war as well? That's just that's a country going insane, just like a small community and some local idiots can, you know, that they get too full of themselves. They get too, you know.
Well, the first time you see it, Patrick is walking down the beach, and you hear sort of the distant explosions. I think you even maybe see a smoke cloud, and he says, and the line, "Good luck to ye, whatever it is you're fighting about." And that could apply, you know, to their own situation on the island there too.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. Because it's Patrick's, maybe he really doesn't know. He doesn't understand why. I would push back a bit. You had said before about his character that he is unconcerned with. I think they're all, and he is also concerned. My chat isn't weird. It's normal, good chatting. He is concerned. He asks his sister, it's like, oh, you don't think I'm stupid, do you?
Good chat.
People aren't laughing at me behind my back, you know, and how everyone's like kind of maybe do a little bit.
You
know,
but
like, who's his only other friend? Dom. You know, Otherwise, he sells his milk. He goes to the pub. He hangs out with, his friends, his so-called friends. Yeah, I think there's like a deeper thing going on here about just say small S society, not the thing out there that we can rail against, but how we can behave in groups,
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I don't think it's painting, in this case, rural Ireland in a particularly, pretty,
or
light
even any,
there.
community, this kind of behavior I'm sure is happening in Winnipeg right now. The option you do have in a city is the option to connect with others or take a break from
or get
others.
lost.
One of the
many
great things about a city, all things rise in cities.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
If I'm still not 100% sure we actually could say we know what it's about. But I think we do agree that it isn't just a straight up allegory of the Irish Civil War. Like, it just
it's so many people said that it makes me suspicious. But, just straight up. Yeah, it's an allegory.
Yeah. It's like, how lazy are you? Let's talk about the story a bit more, though. Just the way he told, not just from the point of view, but the way he told the story. What do you think? Why is this? Like, I was, once I was in, as miserable and kind of a bummer. Like, there's some comedy every now and then, but I would not agree that it's a tragic comedy unless it's all like kind of a comedy of, well, this is stupid and we are stupid, aren't we? Maybe a drier, higher level joke, but it really is far more tragic than it is comic. Why are we, what does he do in his storytelling? Some killer dialogue, but there's more going on here. And yes, killer performances. Fucking everyone delivers the right performance at the right time, no more, no less. No scenery chewing. Everything like a Hemingway novel, lean and tight and just enough. What is it about this storytelling, though, that makes us stick to the end?
That's a good question. It's pretty vivid, and it sort of it jumps equally, like it gives equal time to a lot of different characters. It's not just Padraig. Yeah, is the focus, but it does look at the others as well, and I think that sort of it sort of rounds out the community a little bit as much as you can do. I mean, it's under 2 hours, right? So it's an hour 55 or something like that. So he gets a lot in there, but I suspect that gives equal time to so many people. It's not, and it's not even that it's a quick cut. There's not a lot of edits like that, but they're decent. They have decent conversations. They're decently long scenes. It's not like a play, but everyone gets a sort of a chance to express their character. So I think that sort of that it jumps between the characters a little bit. I think that sort of gives it a little bit of jam there. Black comedy. That side-splitting suicide in the third act. What a knee slapper. But, you could probably, with Miss McCormick, you could probably recut the trailers people have done into a horror movie featuring her.
Even there's a moment where she's beckoning.
Yeah.
Like a ghoul.
Mm-hmm.
What, that ghoul?
Yeah. Well, banshees and water and death and, you can sort of,
But coming back to Mrs. McCormick, so now this is partly just it's a shout out to one of our new subscribers, the Media Insider. He did a great piece recently, so this is kind of in my brain. It's Vladimir Prop's his character archetypes. So there's a villain, there's a hero, there's a donor, there's the princess. And I kind of like these ways of breaking down it helps me break a story. So I'll put a link to that in the description. But I come back to, again, Mrs. McCormick, because you can kind of get, okay, there's a sidekick. There's this, there's that. Some are pretty straightforward. O'Riordan, the cop, they're petty villains.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that Colm is a villain. He's a villain that doesn't realize he's a villain until the end. He's a great villain because he's understandable and he's human. And as I've admitted, on this, it's like, I've been that dick, which is great. But, I lost my backlight. What is Mrs. McCormick's role? Other than, is it just some brilliant setup because he's like, boy, I have this line that is going to hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise, she's the only one who's unaffected by the truth bombs being delivered.
Mm-hmm.
Because truth is delivered with cruelty in this film, even when it's, hey, that needs to be said. But you almost have to the only time, even when he does it, Padraig, it's trying to get something off his back, except in the pub when he kind of lays it all out there, all drunk. And, Siobhan, well, you said something nice about me. And he's, well, of course, what can you say? She is the only one, when a truth bomb is laid around her, about how Siobhan hides behind the fence. It's like she does not seem to be bothered by it.
Yeah. Yeah, she's almost a supernatural character. I don't know my sort of Greek legends well, but would there be not even a chorus, but like sort of a harbinger or the omen? Well, that's not a big stretch because she said, oh, somebody's gonna die, maybe two people will die.
And then she's, come on.
Yeah.
What creepy. But and who does die in that lake?
Yeah.
Dominic, who goes over there, and does she
Calls
just
it a great old lake,
yeah,
minutes
and
before.
is he drawn in? She is the one who finds him. She is like a symbol of death.
Mhm.
But I'm like just trying to, it's like, is that it? Just almost
Yeah.
like a shout out to, the role of the actual creepy in a community,
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit, sort of reminds me of that Don't Look Now with the creepy old woman in red in the Venice canals and that kind of thing. But very, it's kind of an interesting, quite an interesting role.
Yeah.
I suspect she'd be unrecognizable in other movies or TV shows that she's done. But,
Yeah. But she's great in this. And I guess,
used very effectively.
yeah.
Too.
Oh, totally. Again, like everything at the right place and time. And even the dissonance isn't hard. When you're going back to the use of the cinematography, the production design and everything, it's not like it's not bugging you immediately. You're not taken out of the movie by it. It's subtle enough that you're getting the message under your conscious observing of the plot,
Yeah.
And I think that that's just another testimony to the craft skills of the filmmakers, including the performers. You can see why McDonough, it's like, no, I'll go back to Brendan and Colin. Yeah, they'll deliver.
Oh yeah.
They're old enough now for this story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a good turn. When you remember what Colin Farrell, he was sort of like the good looking hot guy, and he did a lot of sort of douchebag kind of performances, and
but
he's sort of grown
could have been a
into-
leading man, like has been in leading man roles, could still be in leading man roles.
Yeah. It just recently did After Yang as well, which was we didn't do it on this show, but it's quite a good movie. But I enjoyed it anyway. But so he's got an interesting sort of second half of his career going on right now, definitely.
All right. Two more items, and then we should wrap it up. One, what did you think of how Padraig, like you see him at his lowest? I mean, he's burnt the thing down, but he's reading that lovely letter. Which again, Siobhan just gets these great lines, and it was after a whole, you can get away with the petty, the blah blah blah, like a long list of what sucks about living in Inisherin. This is and literally on a positive, upbeat note, you can do that anywhere. So come live with me. There's a room here. You can find work, and he proceeds to lie. Jenny's looking at me. I've got these things to take care of. I've got these friends, even though now he knows Dom's dead. Like, it's done. And although as he's crying, like, and it's heartbreaking, him saying, please, Siobhan, come back. He doesn't put that in the letter, and it's, it seems to be a testimony, like a statement of that he is not unaware of what his sister needs. He's behaved selfishly around his sister, but not a real, like, it never, it's like he wants her to come back, desperately wants her to come back. It is his only human friend now.
Yeah.
But he doesn't put that in the letter. Like, how do you take that? What do you think we're supposed to draw from that?
I think it's just, a lot of this too is the strength of men, right? It is the nobody says the words, manly men. Well, there's a little bit of it is, why doesn't he just push it down like the rest of us? And referring to the sort of the general ennui or depression in the island's population. And that's sort of about the only extent of it. They don't really talk about the roles of men, but in a way, it's sort of a subtext of this whole thing. Be a man, be steady, perform your duties.
Well, and Siobhan, that midpoint about you're also fucking boring with your petty shit. And another man.
Oh, yeah,
doesn't talk.
Yeah, but people don't often talk about this sort of what a man is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Just sort of what they, like you should be manly about this or whatever. It's just sort of baked into it.
It's demonstrated, not told.
I think,
which is all fucking movie. For all the talking, it really is a show don't tell flick.
Oh yeah. But I think in this case, Padraig would feel flaky moving to the island, and he'd be abandoning his dead parents, if that makes sense. It was their plot of land, and I think there's an aspect of responsibility as a son, for that. But they don't really talk about that too much. Just that they were close to their parents. It seemed like a fairly decent family, like a well-developed family. But unlike some of the others on the island, of course. But
horror shows, it seems.
Yeah. But. So I think that's part of it, just that stubbornness of man. It's not quite stiff upper lip. That's more of a British thing, but it's the Irish version, I think, of a stiff upper lip that you're supposed to keep as a man, and he just can't go there or envision himself.
We see that here as well.
Yeah.
That's and I know I use the phrase a lot on our show, but I think it's relevant here that. It's funny, actually, especially the right wing has sort of turned the idea of toxic masculinity as this attack on masculinity. They're just saying you're toxic. And it's like where it starts, or at least it's a big part of it, is the harm you do to yourself by not and you see that moment where, Patrick has got every right to fucking cry. He just got beaten in the street. He's getting driven home by this guy who used to be his friend who won't talk to him. He is cut off. And what's wrong with a good cry?
Yeah.
And that's the point. Well, all right, I'm going to go this way. A literal fork in the road, which I think really is the key turning point. That because there is the moment where they could have had a rapprochement. They could have bygones be bygones. And there he is. Oh, sorry, crier. I have music to create.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe this finger cutting thing was stupid. Let's rethink that.
All right. Well, Jim, I kind of circle back to why I think this movie is worth seeing is it sticks. And it says it has levels.
Yeah.
But it says so much, and I think it'll reward multiple viewings. Let's jump into, let's jump into final thoughts here.
Sure.
I'm going to start with one more question for you.
Sure.
If there was, Jim, an actual kind of a thesis statement for the film, is there is column, finally, so I guess with the house, we're quits, hey, we're good, maybe not we're good, but our feud's over. And he's like, no, it isn't. And I think we're also hearing explosions, like we're hearing some bit of the Civil War going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, some things are worth holding on to, or, they're good, that they never go away. Because I think he literally says, I'm taking this till we're dead.
Yeah.
I am not letting this go. And he says something, and what do you think he's saying there? What do you think the filmmaker is saying there? And I say this to you and anyone in the comments, all these questions are for you guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
write what you think. Like, this movie is, how did you put it, Jim, at the very beginning? Asking a lot of questions and going places that a lot of movies don't go. And it's left me with a lot of questions. But and this is the skill in the guy's storytelling is I still feel satisfied at the end. I feel nourished if a film can do that. My soul does feel better, even though I saw myself in what I think is the villain, Colm. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, sorry, there was a question in there?
Yes, there was. Do you have any thoughts on Padraig's? Yeah, some things are worth taking to the grave. Some things are worth not letting go of.
Yeah, I think, it's just the eventuality of conflict is just that it in this case it's curdled this friendship and curdled these two men's personalities. I think that it's a little bit of maybe a binary choice for Padraig. Like he's not going back now. Like he can't just go back to being the nice guy. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's except that there's that little bit of hope. The dog. Yeah, he's got any time. There's like it's almost like he's trying to cling to his decency.
He's got rules. He's got a code. Yeah. But.
Yeah. All right. What do you what are some of your final thoughts, Jim, before we wrap this up?
Final thoughts. While I was watching this, I was thinking. You mentioned that Colm becomes a villain at the end. He's realizing he's become the villain at the end. I thought, is this Irish Unbreakable? The M. Night Shyamalan movie. One thing we didn't talk about too much, and it's a whole other conversation, and I don't know much about the use of color. Yellow coat on a black boat, painting the post office box from
that
red
fresh
to green. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. I don't have enough to say about that, but it's something to watch out for.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I thought the same thing. And it's like, but is it? Yes, color theory is well, it's like one of those theories. It's like, is that actually established like a scientific thing? It's culturally bound. And so it'd be interesting to hear from somebody who maybe is a little more familiar with the history, it's what's being painted over.
Yes.
Because you know what it could have been, Jim, is painting over a color, because if it was red under it, that would have been the British. That would have been the old,
that's right too.
The old English, they're overlords. So you're painting over
Absolutely.
that. But it's still the same miserable asshole running the show, right? Like, just as the cop doesn't care who's killing who.
Yeah.
$6 bob and a free lunch. Like, he would have been a thug throughout the whole. He liked it when they were killing people, when there was just one enemy, but he's really good with any of it.
Yeah.
When he isn't, sitting there passed out after masturbating. All right, back to color, Jim. You really see it on Siobhan.
Yes, yeah. That's where I noticed it.
Yeah, Siobhan, and then a bit of painting and that. But is that maybe also like kind of the... Well, even the reds are, when in a red coat, a yellow coat, coming back to what you're talking about, is it's warmer. It's not like a hot red. Mm-hmm. It does, though, imply life. And maybe that's it. Like she's the one who's trying to live. Everyone else is just existing, I think. Except Padraig, who's existing in his... Well, this is my best life. The almost in a kind of playing with the divorce idea, it's not me, it's you. But in some ways, if we could criticize Padraig, is he realized like people grow and they want to do things. And he just wants it to be like it was every other fucking day.
Yeah.
You know, and if there's any criticism of, and maybe that's the horrible change is he has changed. He has gone through an arc. But because it's almost like he's realized it can't be like it was before. And well,
Yeah.
the new one is me. Hey, here's a new feud. That doesn't change my idea of him being the hero and somebody I really feel bad and feel for. And I think of the people I've been a dick to and kind of going, oh, maybe it's just a bad drink and I'm the asshole.
Yeah. Well, I think we've all had a bit of both.
Yeah.
perhaps.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not like, oh, this has destroyed me, but it does. And I think that's such a great movie. Like, again, back to the great storytelling is he can get me to feel that. Be uncomfortable, yet and sympathetic and on, because it is. I empathize with all these characters and sympathize with them to a degree. Not the cop. Fuck that guy. You know, Reardon.
Priest is,
screw
Priest
her.
is pretty shitty too.
Priest, yeah. You know what? Yeah, and again, it always feckin', except at the end, and you hear fucking, and then you go, and I was like, and it hits like a hammer, and you go, oh, the feckin' isn't just the way they say fucking, it's the way they avoid saying that, and so when you hear that, it has so much impact.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
good point.
Anything else you want to add before we wrap this baby up?
No, I think we got it all. I'm just taking a quick. There's a line that Dom says when he scares Siobhan at the lakeside. He goes, "I wasn't creeping up on you. I was sidling up on you."
You know what? We're gonna have to do like a top, or we could easily do a top 5, top 10 lines.
Yeah.
And all it just great dialogue, killer delivery, and again at the right time and just properly set up. Goddamn genius.
Yeah, and maybe I need to go back and look at 3 Billboards, which is one of his earlier movies that I didn't really care for. So maybe I didn't give that enough credit, or maybe it's just not a very good movie. I don't recall being moved by it all that much, but this is super solid in a lot of ways. Like I'll when we talk about what movies are we going to maybe watch again, I give it a while. I've seen it twice now, but I'll revisit this at some point in the future.
Yeah. All right. On that note, want to once again thank everyone for joining us here. There'll be a place to subscribe, place to watch another great video that YouTube thinks you should watch, and also our deep dives into other 2023 Best Picture nominations. Say goodnight, Jim.
Good night, Jim.
Okay, bye, everybody.